Here we go. We caught her. She's on her phone.
Reading the Bible, you guys.
Yay! Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man.
Oh,
Dude, that was good.
That
Too bad. That would have been funny if it was like...
Just on Facebook, y'all.
Oh, that girl, like... Yeah, okay, honey. Okay. Man. Thank you for joining us today. This is part 3, episode 3 of our series called The Essence. By the way, I love the intro. I love it. Absolutely love it. It's fun. It's exciting. It's cool.
I didn't even watch it.
That's okay.
Does it look like a perfume commercial?
No, next one we do should.
It just sounds like it would, like
The essence
of
Dior.
So dumb.
Hey, if you're new to this space, my name is Chris. This is my beautiful wife, Monica. We have the honor and privilege of leading this community called Agape. If you have missed any of our messages, you can always watch them on our website at agapeonlinechurch.com, or you can go to all the social media, our YouTube. It's all under the same handle, Agape Online Church. If you enjoy these messages, if you could just share them. You like how I did that? Share them. Like just share them. Just pass them along, and hopefully it can encourage some of your friends and family, and just allow people to get a glimpse of who Jesus is. Mm-hmm. In this series, we are talking about the grace of God. It is essentially the essence of who he is, the gospel, which is translated to good news, the good news, right? And there is nothing greater than God's grace. And when you realize what that means for you and your life, mm-hmm. I mean, it's a powerful thing.
I think what a lot of us have been taught in our lives is that it doesn't sound like good news, right? What a lot of us have been taught sounds like pretty bad news. Maybe some news in general, or just not fun.
Yeah,
news, but it's good news. So in order for it to be good news, it has to be good for all of us, right? And it is.
It's fantastic.
That's what we're talking about.
Yes.
That's what we've been talking about for a few weeks. We're going to talk about it for a couple weeks more.
Yeah.
And we really, really, really hope that you walk away from these messages knowing who Jesus is and what he wants for your life, because it's good, right? It's good.
So good.
Good stuff, good news.
So good.
And it's all based on who he is, not who you are. And it's a load off, right?
Take the pressure off. Is that a song?
Is that a song? No, you're thinking Under Pressure. Take the pressure. Is that a song? No. Under Pressure. Is that what you're thinking of?
Under Pressure. No, I like that song.
Take the pressure off.
I don't know. Yeah. Take the pressure off.
Yeah.
Man. Anyways, before we go any further, one of my favorite verses is, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith." That is so powerful. It is, for it is by grace you have been saved, not by your doing, right? That is freedom. I just wanted to share that with you real quick.
So we've been going through a few different stories in the Bible that illustrate God's faith and who he is. The first week we talked about the prodigal son. The second week we talked about the woman at the well. And the common theme in these stories is that God is good even when you're not, right? He's still good even when you're not. And his grace is enough for us. And whether we feel shame or we feel resentment towards other people who we think aren't good enough, or we feel like we're unworthy, the Bible tells us over and over and over again that we are.
That's right.
Today, we are going to be reading a little thing from the perspective of Paul.
Mr. Paul.
This is in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. And It's called Strength Out of Weakness, is what the section of the Bible is called. And he's talking about these revelations that he's gotten from God, and all of these things that have happened. And then he goes on to say that because of the extravagance, right, of these revelations, he could brag about himself, right?
Oh,
And
look
so-
at me.
yeah.
Look what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I bet he posted it.
probably. He probably wanted to.
Dude, I just really want to post these things. Like,
Yeah.
I'm the real deal.
So he tells us, he says,
Keep going.
if I had a mind to brag a little bit, I probably could, because, and I wouldn't look ridiculous, because like these things were like a big deal, right? But I'll spare you, right? I don't want anyone imagining me as anything other than the fool that you'd encounter if you saw me on the street or heard me talk, right? So he's saying like some big things have happened in my life, but I don't want you to see those things. Like I just want you to think of me as some random fool on the street. If you've ever heard
I've
me
never heard anybody say that either. Right? Like, it's opposite. It's like, look at me, man. Yeah, God loves me. He don't
Look
love
what I
you.
did.
Look at what I did.
Well, it's funny because, and this is, I mean, there's not that there's anything wrong with it, but like if you ever go to like a public speaking event of any kind, like a conference or anything like that, and there's multiple speakers, what do we do before the speakers come on, right? We pump them up. It's like, this guy has his PhD and his LDC and his FRA and his he went to school here and he lived there and he, baptized 9,000 people all over the world and,
Woo!
dug a well in Africa and, we just like list all of their accolades before they come on stage. Why? Because we think like, well, we need the audience to buy what they're saying.
Yeah.
And we want you to feel comfortable and to know the value of what they're about to bring to you, right?
Yeah.
And so Paul is basically saying, like, I don't want to do all that, right? He's like,
I don't like that.
He's saying, I don't want to do all that. I just want you to think of me as some random dude off the street, right? And he says, because of the extravagance of these revelations, and so that I wouldn't get a big head, I was given the gift of a handicap. In the NIV version, he says, I was given a thorn in my flesh.
And we don't know what
that
is.
is.
No. Some speculate that it was like depression or anxiety,
Right.
something along those
Right.
those lines.
Some kind of,
Anger,
just
maybe.
hardship.
I don't know. Something.
Yeah.
Just something.
right.
They're not really sure.
Maybe he had like a constant temptation that was terrible,
Yeah.
or whatever it is, some kind of hindrance, right?
Yep.
So they call it a handicap in this one. I've been given the gift of a handicap to keep me in constant touch with my limitations.
Oh, man.
And I can relate to this a lot because
Woo!
I know
Everybody can.
told you guys a lot that I've struggled with depression, and every time I think that I've overcome it or that it's good and I'm all right, like it'll sneak back up. But it's funny because every time it sneaks back up, I get back in touch with the compassion that I need to have with other people, right? Because I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot what it feels like.
Yep.
Right? Oh yeah, I
forgot
that I didn't actually fully over that. You're not in control of it, that it is a thing, and I need to have this compassion and support for other people going through other things, right?
And so many people, so many of us included, right, want this handicap to go away.
Right.
Like just get rid of it.
Right.
Like I'd be so much better if I didn't have this, right?
I still pray for that all the time.
Yeah.
Please just take it away.
Yeah,
it's annoying.
absolutely.
It's stupid. It doesn't serve me in my life, but it does serve me in my life. Because
it allows you to help others. And I always say this, it's like, man, you go through these certain things in life so that you're able to help somebody else. Right. It's not only for you, it's for them.
Right.
And that's
well, and like what Paul is saying here, it also serves you even though it doesn't feel like it does. Because then he says, I've been given the gift of this handicap to keep me in constant touch with my limitations, right? Because when we get too much of a big head, when we think that we can control everything and do everything and accomplish everything on our own, there's no room for God and for glorifying him, right? So it says Satan's angel did his best to get me down, What he in fact did was push me to my knees, right? No danger then of walking around all high and mighty. I first didn't think of this as a gift, right? Like we said, I would never consider that to be a gift.
Yeah.
And I begged God to remove it, like we all do. 3 times I did that. And then he told me, my grace is enough. It's all that you need. Right? 3 times he's begged God, like, take this away from me. I don't want it.
Yeah.
This is hard. It's holding me down. Like, God, please take it away from me. And God said, my grace is enough. It is all that you need.
I want you guys to write this down, memorize this. My grace is enough. It's all you need. Like, that's what God told Paul. Mm-hmm. That's what he's telling you today. God is telling you this.
He said, my strength comes into its own in your weakness. This is what God told him. My strength comes into its own in your weakness, right? What does that mean? He's saying, when you're weak, it gives me the glory, right? If Chris and I started this church 7 years ago, and we had been public speakers and scholars and all the things, like, and we had, he worked at a church for a long time before that, but he was in a speaking position. So had we been in a speaking position for a long time and we had all this experience and we did all these things, then our church would have made sense, right? And everyone could have said, look at Chris and Monica, they're awesome. They started this church. And of course they did. They have all of this experience and they've done all of these things. But the fact that we didn't have all of that and we started it made it that much more amazing, because we couldn't have done it without God, right? We would not have been able to do any of the things that we have done without him showing up. Had he not shown up, we would have looked like complete idiots, right? We would have looked like a fool off the street. Like
it's crazy too, because he had to show up every single Sunday.
Right.
Like it never. You would think this is going to get a little bit easier. just you'll have a little more confidence, and it's like, nah, it didn't. In fact, we had to step back so that he can move in and do what only he can do.
Right. And likewise, when I'm in one of those states of depression, right, where it's like, like my world feels so heavy, it's hard to breathe, like I just can't feel the joy, nothing's going on in my life that's terrible. Nobody died, nothing's happened, no one's sick, nothing's going on. I just feel sad and heavy, and like I can't lift this cloud, this darkness up off of me. I have to rely on God in those days, right? Like without him, it feels impossible to get out of bed. It feels impossible to go and do one of these messages, right? It feels impossible to love my kids and my husband the way that I think they deserve, right? And so in those moments of my weakness, right, in my regular life, I as I'm going along, I can start to feel like, no, I got this. Like, I'm good. I do all the things I'm supposed to do. And so my life is great because I do all these things I'm supposed to do, right? And of course, doing all the things you're supposed to do are helpful, right? Like, I work out consistently, and I drink water, and I eat healthy food, and I, kiss my kids goodnight, and whatever. We make their lunches and take them to school and do all the things. Like, I've got this under control. My life, of course, it's good and makes sense because I do all the right things, right? And we talked about this in our Again and Again series, right? Where doing all the right things is really good, right? It keeps you in good health. It keeps you in shape. It keeps you ready for the things that God has for you in your life. But it is not going to give you salvation, right? It is not going to earn you a place in heaven for all of eternity.
That's right.
Only God's grace can do that. And sometimes when we have these things these weaknesses, right? These things that can hold us down, it's a good reminder of knowing, like, no, you don't have everything you need unless you have God, unless you have Jesus, right? There's always going to be a big gaping hole in your life where he belongs, right? And if you have him, he'll give you the strength to pull through and continue to do the things you need to do in your life, right? Sometimes we need more, right? Sometimes we need medication. I'm not saying that if you believe enough that your depression will just go away. That's absolutely not been true in my case, right? Like sometimes you need medication, and you need the exercise, and you need the good food, and you need, the support system in your life, and you need God, right? You need all of the things in order for it to all work.
Yeah.
But he's saying here, in your weakness, that's when you can really feel my strength. If you just went along in your life controlling everything all the time, you would just start to believe in yourself only, right? Where it's like, no, I got this. I don't need God. I got it all. I have it under control. Everything's fine, right? And he's telling us, my strength comes into its own in your weakness. Once I heard that, Paul says, I was glad to let it happen. I quit focusing on the handicap itself and began appreciating the gift. It was a case of Christ's strength moving in on my weakness. Now I take limitations and breaks. I just let Christ take over. And so the weaker I get, the stronger I become. Because when the weaker I get, the stronger I become. How does that make sense? When I become so weak that only God's strength can do it, well, isn't God stronger than you anyway, right? So if we're living in his strength, how much more can we do? How much better can we be? How much more peace can we have? How much freedom can we have when we're living in God's strength instead of our own?
We all want this kind of life, the freedom in that. Mm-hmm. Like knowing like, oh man, okay, there are these moments in my life where I am weak and I know it's going to come up over and over again, like you said. And it's like the dependence on God. If we can get to that spot, he can take us to places and spaces where we don't belong, where we couldn't even imagine. And it allows us to then help others and bring them along this journey to understand like, man, despite your weaknesses, guess what? God has you. Mm-hmm. He's done this in my life. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, it's not even a limitation anymore. It is actually a gift because of the people I can help, because of him showing up in my life. I just got to step out of the way and allow him to move through me. Mm-hmm. That's it. I mean, every day we have to live from God's grace. Absolutely. Right? We have to look to him for guidance, provision, and protection. Mm-hmm. We all do. Like that's just the grace of God, is like God will help you in your weakness, despite your weakness. Paul says he no longer looks at it as a handicap.
Right.
Like, what?
Right.
Like, what a perspective shift.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I thought this was a weakness, but now I look at it differently. Mm-hmm. I look at it as this perspective of what can God do with this? Mm-hmm. Where that way he's elevated and not me. Right. Not me, but God.
God has given every single one of us a purpose for our life, right? A plan and a purpose. And it's a good plan, right? And it's a good purpose. And so many of us feel unworthy. We feel unequipped.